I'm going to tell you something that sounds absolutely insane, and I don't expect you to believe me. Hell, I wouldn't believe me either if I hadn't lived through it. But what happened to me over the past few months has completely changed everything I thought I knew about the world. I met a Bigfoot. Not just any Bigfoot, one that could talk. And before you close this tab or roll your eyes, just hear me out. This is my story, and every word of it is true. I've been living alone in a cabin in northern Washington for about 7 years now. The property sits on 43 acres of dense forest with a small lake on the eastern edge. I bought the place after my divorce. Needed to get away from everything and everyone. The nearest town is about 18 miles down a dirt road that turns into mud soup every time it rains. I like it that way. No neighbors, no noise, just me in the woods. The cabin itself isn't much. 2 rooms, a wood stove, and solar panels on the roof that barely keep my fridge running. I hunt for most of my food, fish the lake when the weather's decent, and grow vegetables in a small garden plot I cleared behind the cabin. It's simple living, the kind that makes you appreciate things like hot coffee and a dry pair of socks. I'm out here because I wanted peace, wanted to be left alone. And for 7 years, that's exactly what I got. Sure, I'd see deer almost daily, black bears in the spring and fall, and even had a mountain lion pass through once, but I never felt unsafe. I knew these woods like the back of my hand. Every trail, every clearing, every spot where the elk liked to bed down. That all changed about 4 months ago. It was late afternoon in June, and I was sitting on my porch with a beer, watching the sun start its slow descent behind the trees. The lake was calm, reflecting the orange and pink sky like a mirror. I remember thinking it was one of those perfect moments, the kind you can't plan or force. They just happen. Then I saw movement near the lakeshore, maybe 200 yards out. At first, I thought it was a person, because whatever it was stood upright and was walking on 2 legs. But something about the way the Bigfoot moved wasn't right. The Bigfoot was too tall, too broad, and the Bigfoot walked with this strange, loping gait that no human has. I set my beer down and squinted, trying to get a better look. The Bigfoot was heading toward the water, moving through the trees along the eastern shore. My first thought was that some hiker had gotten lost and wandered onto my property. It happens sometimes, even though I'm miles from any official trail. But this was different. The Bigfoot had to be at least 7 ft tall, maybe more. And the Bigfoot was massive, not fat, just built like a linebacker who'd been hitting the gym hard for 20 years. I stood up and went inside, grabbed my rifle from above the door. It's a hunting rifle. Nothing fancy, but I keep the rifle loaded and ready just in case. I wasn't planning to shoot anyone, but if a trespasser was on my land, I wanted to be prepared. I've had problems with poachers before, guys who think that just because a place is remote, they can do whatever they want. I headed down toward the lake, moving quietly through the underbrush. I've spent enough time in these woods that I know how to walk without making much noise. The Bigfoot was still moving when I started following, heading right for the water's edge. I kept my distance, staying behind trees, using the terrain to stay hidden. As I got closer, maybe 75 YD away, I could see the Bigfoot more clearly. And that's when my brain started trying to make sense of what I was looking at. The Bigfoot wasn't wearing any clothes. The Bigfoot was covered in dark brown hair, thick and matted from head to toe. The Bigfoot's shoulders were impossibly wide, and when the Bigfoot pushed aside a low-hanging branch, I saw arms that looked more like tree trunks than human limbs. My heart started pounding. This wasn't a person. This wasn't a bear either. I've seen plenty of bears, and they don't walk upright like that. Not with such purpose and balance. The Bigfoot moved like someone who belonged in these woods, someone who'd been here longer than me, longer than anyone. The Bigfoot reached the lakeshore and stopped. For a moment, the Bigfoot just stood there looking out over the water. Then the Bigfoot knelt on one knee, lowering that massive frame to the ground. The Bigfoot leaned forward, cupped those enormous hands in the water, and brought the water up to drink. I was frozen, watching from behind a thick Douglas fir about 40 yards away. My rifle was still in my hands, but I'd completely forgotten about it. I was too busy trying to process what I was seeing. This was a Bigfoot, an actual, honest-to-God Bigfoot. The thing people spend their whole lives searching for. The thing that's supposed to be a myth, a legend, a campfire story. A campfire. And the Bigfoot was right there, drinking from my lake like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then the Bigfoot spoke. The Bigfoot's voice was deep, deeper than any human voice I've ever heard. The sound came from somewhere in that massive chest and echoed across the water. 2 words, clear as day in perfect English. "You're hiding." I felt my blood turn to ice. The Bigfoot hadn't turned around, hadn't looked in my direction. The Bigfoot was still kneeling at the water's edge, but somehow the Bigfoot knew I was there. Then 2 more words, "Mino." My mind went blank. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to get the hell out of there and never look back. But my legs wouldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, rifle clutched in my sweaty hands, staring at this creature. It shouldn't exist, and definitely shouldn't be able to speak English. The Bigfoot stood up slowly, water dripping from those massive hands. Then the Bigfoot turned around and looked directly at me. I've thought a lot about that moment, tried to put into words what I saw in Bigfoot's face. If you'd asked me before that day what a big food would look like if one existed, I would have described something like a gorilla, animal eyes, aggressive features, maybe bared teeth, or a threatening posture. But that's not what I saw. The Bigfoot's face was unlike anything I could have imagined. The Bigfoot had a flat nose, a heavy brow ridge, and a jaw that jutted forward. The Bigfoot's eyes were dark brown, almost black, and they were looking right at me with an expression I can only describe as calm curiosity. Not anger, not aggression, just awareness. The Bigfoot knew I was there, and the Bigfoot was waiting to see what I would do. My hands were shaking so badly I had to lower the rifle before I dropped it. I was trying to decide whether to run, shoot, or just stand there like an idiot when the Bigfoot did something that changed everything. The Bigfoot sat down. Just like that, the Bigfoot lowered that enormous body onto the rocky shore and crossed those massive legs. Then the Bigfoot raised one hand and pointed at me. Then the Bigfoot pointed at the ground in front of where the Bigfoot was sitting. The message was clear. Sit down. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was a shock. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe some part of my brain realized that if this Bigfoot had wanted to hurt me, the Bigfoot could have done it already. But I walked out from behind that tree, my legs feeling like jelly. And I sat down on the ground about 10 FT away from the Bigfoot. We stared at each other. I'm not exaggerating when I say we must have sat there for 5 full minutes without moving, without speaking, just looking at each other. The Bigfoot's eyes never left mine, and I couldn't bring myself to look away. It was like Bigfoot was studying me, reading something in my face or my posture or the way I was breathing. Finally, I found my voice. It came out as barely more than a whisper. I asked how Bigfoot knew English. The Bigfoot tilted that massive head slightly, like the Bigfoot was considering the question. Then the Bigfoot spoke again in that same deep, rumbling voice. Listen, watch. 2 words, but they were enough. The Bigfoot had learned by listening to people, watching them, and picking up words and meanings over time. How long had the Bigfoot been doing that? How many people had Bigfoot observed without them ever knowing? I tried asking more questions, but the Bigfoot just kept staring at me. After another minute or 2, the Bigfoot stood up. The Bigfoot was even more massive standing. I'm 6 FT tall, and the Bigfoot had at least 1.5 feet on me, probably more. The Bigfoot looked down at me for a moment and turned and walked back into the forest, moving between the trees with surprising grace for something so large. And then the Bigfoot was gone. I sat there on the shore for another 20 minutes, trying to convince myself that what had just happened was real. My hands were still shaking when I finally stood up and walked back to my cabin. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on my porch with my rifle across my lap, staring into the darkness and wondering if the Bigfoot would come back. 3 days passed before I saw the Bigfoot again. I'd spent those days in a state of constant alertness, jumping at every sound, checking the tree line every few minutes. Part of me thought I'd imagined the whole thing, that I'd finally lost my mind from living alone for too long. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd heard. On the 3rd day, I was down by the lake again, fishing off a small dock I'd built years ago. It was early morning, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. I had my line in the water and was watching the bobber drift lazily across the surface when I heard a sound behind me. I turned around and nearly fell off the dock. The Bigfoot was standing at the edge of the trees, maybe 30 ft away, just watching me. The Bigfoot must have been standing there for a while because the Bigfoot hadn't made a sound approaching. The Bigfoot was completely silent despite its massive size. My heart was racing, but this time I didn't feel the same panic I'd felt before. The Bigfoot wasn't being aggressive, wasn't moving toward me, or making any threatening gestures. The Bigfoot was just standing there watching, like the Bigfoot was waiting for something. I stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. I raised one hand in what I hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The Bigfoot watched me do this, then raised one massive hand in return, mimicking my gesture almost exactly. Then the Bigfoot spoke, "Fish. Good." I realized Bigfoot was commenting on what I was doing. The Bigfoot approved of fishing, or at least understood what I was trying to accomplish. I nodded, not sure what else to do, and gestured toward my fishing rod. I tried to explain that I was trying to catch dinner, but the Bigfoot just kept staring at me with those dark, intelligent eyes. After a moment, the Bigfoot turned and walked along the shore, moving away from me. The Bigfoot stopped after about 20 yards and looked back, clearly wanting me to follow. I hesitated, then decided that if the Bigfoot wanted to show me something, I might as well see what the Bigfoot had in mind. I followed the Bigfoot along the shore for maybe a quarter mile. The Bigfoot moved slowly, stopping occasionally to make sure I was still following. We came to a spot where a small stream fed into the lake, creating a shallow pool where the current slowed down. The Bigfoot stopped and pointed at the water. At first, I didn't see what the Bigfoot was showing me. Then I noticed the fish, dozens of them, maybe more, all gathered in the shallow pool. They were big ones too, probably rainbow trout, each one easily 2 or 3 lb. The Bigfoot had brought me to the best fishing spot on the entire lake, a place I'd never found in 7 years of living here. I looked at the Bigfoot, amazed. The Bigfoot just nodded once, like the Bigfoot was satisfied that I understood, then turned and walked back into the forest. That was the beginning of something I still don't fully understand. Over the next few weeks, the Bigfoot kept appearing, sometimes at the lake, sometimes near my cabin. Once in the middle of the trail when I was hiking up to check my game cameras. The Bigfoot never came too close, never tried to touch me or enter my cabin. But the Bigfoot was clearly interested in me, and slowly, carefully, we started to communicate. The Bigfoot's vocabulary was limited, mostly 1 or 2 word sentences, sometimes 3 if the Bigfoot was trying to explain something complex. But what the Bigfoot lacked in words, the Bigfoot made up for with gestures and expressions. The Bigfoot was intelligent, more intelligent than I ever would have believed possible. The Bigfoot understood concepts, could follow complex ideas, and seemed to have a deep knowledge of the forest and everything in it. I started leaving food out, sometimes jerky, fruit and bread, placing it on a large rock near the edge of my property. The Bigfoot would take it, but the Bigfoot always left something in return. Sometimes it was medicinal plants I recognized, like yarrow or devil's club. Sometimes it was things I didn't recognize, roots or berries that the Bigfoot would demonstrate eating first, showing me they were safe. One time I left out a blanket because I'd noticed the Bigfoot had a nasty gash on one shoulder, probably from a fight with another animal. The next morning, the blanket was gone, but in its place was a large piece of amber with a perfectly preserved insect inside. I still have it. I do know where the Bigfoot found it or why the Bigfoot thought it was a fair trade, but I kept it anyway. The Bigfoot started teaching me things about the forest, not with words. The Bigfoot didn't have enough of those, but with actions and demonstrations. The Bigfoot showed me which plants were edible and which ones would make me sick. The Bigfoot showed me game trails I'd never noticed, places where deer and elk like to travel. The Bigfoot showed me a cave system I'd never known existed, hidden behind a waterfall about 3 miles from my cabin. Every time I thought I understood Bigfoot, the Bigfoot would do something that surprised me. The Bigfoot had a sense of humor. I'm serious. One time, I was walking through the woods, and Bigfoot dropped a pine cone on my head from a tree branch above me. When I looked up, the Bigfoot was sitting up there, and I swear, the Bigfoot was grinning. The Bigfoot thought it was hilarious. About 2 months after our first encounter, I started to understand what the Bigfoot was really trying to teach me. We were sitting by the lake one evening. This had become something of a routine, and fishing while the Bigfoot watched from the shore, when a family of deer came down to drink on the opposite side. The Bigfoot pointed at them and said, "They eat, leave." I nodded, not sure where the Bigfoot was going with this. Then the Bigfoot pointed at me and said, "You eat, they die." I understood. The Bigfoot was talking about the natural order of things, the cycle of predator and prey. I tried to explain that I only took what I needed, that I didn't hunt for sport or waste anything. The Bigfoot seemed to understand this concept already, because the Bigfoot nodded and said, "Good balance." Over the following weeks, the Bigfoot taught me more about this balance. The Bigfoot showed me how everything in the forest was connected, how each creature played a role. The Bigfoot showed me how many deer would strip the vegetation, how predators kept populations healthy, how even dead trees provided homes for countless insects and birds. The Bigfoot had a perspective on nature that went beyond anything I'd learned in school or read in books. The Bigfoot didn't see the forest as a collection of separate things: trees, animals, water, soil. The Bigfoot saw it all as one living system. Each part is dependent on every other part. And the Bigfoot saw humans as part of that system too, not separate from it. One day, the Bigfoot took me to a clear-cut area about 6 miles from my property. Someone had come through years ago and logged the whole hillside, leaving nothing but stumps and erosion scars. The Bigfoot stood at the edge of this devastation and said one word: wrong. The Bigfoot was angry. I could see it in the way the Bigfoot's massive hands clenched into fists, in the way the Bigfoot's shoulders tensed, but the Bigfoot wasn't angry at me. The Bigfoot was angry at what had been done to this place, at the imbalance that had been created. Then the Bigfoot led me to another area, about a mile away, where a wildfire had burned through maybe 10 years ago. But here, the forest was coming back. Young trees were growing up between the blackened trunks of old ones. Wild flowers covered the ground. Birds were everywhere, and I could see signs of deer and elk. The Bigfoot pointed at this and said, "Fire, good balance." I understood fire was a natural part of the forest cycle. What humans had done with the clear-cutting wasn't natural, wasn't part of any cycle. The Bigfoot was showing me the difference between destruction and renewal, between taking everything and taking what you need. The most dramatic demonstration of Bigfoot's understanding of nature came about 3 months into our strange friendship. I was hiking back to my cabin one afternoon, taking a shortcut through a dense section of forest, and I didn't usually travel. The trail was overgrown, and I was having to push through thick brush and fallen logs. That's when I heard the growling. I froze. There were wolves in these mountains. I'd heard them howling at night, found their tracks occasionally, but I'd never seen one up close. Now I could hear at least 3 of them, maybe more, somewhere in the thick brush ahead of me. Then I saw them. 5 wolves, all adults, all focused on me. The wolves had me surrounded, or close to it. The wolves were moving slowly, deliberately, working together like a coordinated unit. I knew enough about wolves to know this wasn't normal behavior. Wolves avoid humans usually, but these wolves were hungry. I could see their ribs showing through their fur, and I'd stumbled into their territory at the wrong time. I raised my rifle, but I didn't want to shoot. I'd spent 3 months learning from the Bigfoot about balance, about taking only what you need, about respecting the natural order. Killing these wolves just for defending their territory felt wrong, but I wasn't about to let them kill me either. The closest wolf was maybe 20 ft away, lips pulled back, showing teeth. The wolf was getting ready to attack. I was trying to decide which one to shoot first when I heard a sound that made my blood run cold. It was a roar, deep, primal, full of rage and power. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing off the trees and shaking the ground. The wolves heard it too. Every single one of them stopped moving, stopped growling, and their ears went flat against their skulls. Then the big food appeared. The Bigfoot came crashing through the forest like a force of nature, snapping branches and sending smaller trees swaying. The Bigfoot was in full defensive mode, standing at full height, chest out, arms raised. The Bigfoot was terrifying, and I finally understood why people who claim to have seen Bigfoot always talk about the fear they felt. The Bigfoot let out another roar. This one is even louder than the first. Then the Bigfoot charged toward the wolves, covering ground with massive strides. The wolves didn't wait around. The wolves scattered, disappearing into the underbrush so fast I barely saw them go. The Bigfoot stopped about 10 ft from me, still in that aggressive posture, scanning the forest. The Bigfoot was breathing hard, and I could see muscles rippling under that thick hair. The Bigfoot stayed like that for maybe 30 seconds, making sure the wolves were really gone. Then the Bigfoot relaxed, lowered those massive arms, and looked at me. The Bigfoot's expression had changed completely. No more rage. No more aggression, just concern, maybe even worry. The Bigfoot said, "You're safe now." I was shaking, adrenaline flooding my system. I tried to thank the Bigfoot, but my voice wasn't working right. The Bigfoot seemed to understand anyway. The Bigfoot walked over to me, and for the first time, the Bigfoot touched me. The Bigfoot placed one enormous hand on my shoulder. A hand so large it covered my entire shoulder and part of my chest, and just stood there for a moment. Then the Bigfoot said something I'll never forget. "Wolves need to hunt. You need to live differently." The Bigfoot was explaining that the wolves were just doing what wolves do, hunting, trying to survive, and I was doing what humans do, living in the forest, trying to survive. Neither of us was wrong. The Bigfoot was just making sure we could both do what we needed to do without killing each other. The Bigfoot walked me back to my cabin that day, staying close the whole way. When we got there, the Bigfoot stopped at the edge of the clearing and looked at me one more time. The Bigfoot said, "More careful. I promised I would be." The Bigfoot nodded, satisfied, and disappeared back into the trees. After the wolf encounter, something changed between the Bigfoot and me. We'd moved beyond simple curiosity or cautious observation. The Bigfoot had saved my life, and that created a bond I couldn't explain. The Bigfoot seemed to feel it too, because the Bigfoot started spending more time around my property, visiting almost every day. The Bigfoot taught me how to move through the forest the way the Bigfoot did, silent, efficient, reading the landscape for signs of danger or opportunity. The Bigfoot showed me how to step on rocks instead of dry leaves, how to test the wind direction before entering a clearing, and how to use natural cover to stay hidden. I tried teaching the Bigfoot some things too, though I wasn't sure what a creature that lived in the forest could learn from me. I showed the Bigfoot my solar panels one day, tried to explain how they converted sunlight into electricity. The Bigfoot seemed fascinated, though I'm not sure the Bigfoot really understood. The Bigfoot touched the panels gently with one massive finger, then looked at me and said, "Sun, power I see." I laughed at that. I guess to a Bigfoot, solar panels would seem like magic. But then I realized that from Bigfoot's perspective, a lot of human technology probably seemed like magic. The Bigfoot lived without any of it, surviving through knowledge and skill, passed down through generations of Bigfoot kind. That made me wonder about Bigfoot's life, about Bigfoot's past. I tried asking where the Bigfoot came from, if there were other Bigfoot nearby. The Bigfoot was reluctant to answer at first, just shaking that massive head. But eventually the Bigfoot opened up a little. The Bigfoot said, "Family north, far." I understood. The Bigfoot had family somewhere to the north, far from here. I asked if Bigfoot missed them. The Bigfoot looked at me with those dark eyes, and I saw something that looked almost like sadness. Alone, long time. The Bigfoot had been alone for a long time. I didn't know why. Maybe the Bigfoot had been driven away, or maybe the Bigfoot had chosen to leave. But I understood loneliness. That's why I'd come out here in the first place. I told the Bigfoot I was alone too, that I understood what the Bigfoot meant. The Bigfoot nodded slowly, and I think in that moment we really saw each other as equals. Not human and Bigfoot, not two different species, just two beings who chose solitude and found something like friendship instead. In late September, a massive storm system moved into the area. I'd been watching the weather reports on my battery-powered radio, knew it was coming. The forecasters were calling for heavy rain, high winds, maybe even snow at higher elevations. I'd been through storms before, but this one sounded serious. I spent a day preparing, securing everything outside, bringing in extra firewood, and filling every container I had with water in case my well pump lost power. The Bigfoot showed up that afternoon, watching me work. The Bigfoot seemed agitated, pacing back and forth at the edge of the clearing. I asked if Bigfoot was worried about the storm. The Bigfoot nodded and said, "Bad, very bad, you stay inside." I assured the Bigfoot I would. I asked if the Bigfoot had somewhere safe to go. The Bigfoot pointed toward the mountains and said, "Cave safe." The storm hit that night around sunset. The wind came first, bending trees and sending pine needles and small branches flying through the air. Then came the rain, so heavy I couldn't see more than a few feet beyond my windows. Thunder rolled continuously, and lightning lit up the forest in brief, stark flashes. I was sitting by my wood stove, trying to read by lantern light, when I heard something that made me set my book down. It was a sound like timber breaking, loud enough to hear over the wind and rain. Then another crack and another. I went to my window and tried to see what was happening, but the darkness and rain made it impossible. Then lightning flashed, and in that brief moment of illumination, I saw a tree falling. Not just any tree, a massive old-growth Douglas fir, probably 100 ft tall. The tree was coming down right toward my cabin. I didn't have time to think. I grabbed my rifle and my emergency pack and ran for the door. I got it open just as the tree hit. The impact was incredible. The entire cabin shook, and I heard the sound of splitting wood and shattering glass. I threw myself forward out into the rain and wind as part of my roof collapsed behind me. I landed hard in the mud, the rain soaking me instantly. I scrambled to my feet and ran away from the cabin, not stopping until I was 20 yards clear. When I turned around, I could barely see through the rain, but I could tell my cabin was badly damaged. The tree had hit the roof at an angle, crushing one corner and punching through into the interior. I stood there in the storm, rain running down my face, watching the only home I had slowly being destroyed. I had nowhere to go, no shelter, and the storm was getting worse by the minute. I was starting to panic when I heard a familiar sound cutting through the wind. A roar, deep and powerful, calling to me. I turned and saw a massive shape moving through the trees, the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot was coming toward me, moving fast despite the wind and rain. The Bigfoot reached me in seconds, and without hesitation, the Bigfoot picked me up. One arm went under my legs, the other behind my back, and suddenly I was being carried like a child. The Bigfoot moved through the storm like it wasn't even there, navigating the flooded trails and fallen branches with sure footing. I had no idea where we were going. I just held onto my rifle and pack and tried to stay conscious as the rain hammered down on both of us. I don't know how long we traveled, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. Everything blurred together. The rain, the darkness, the sensation of being carried by this massive creature through a forest being torn apart by wind and water. Finally, we stopped. The Bigfoot ducked down, and suddenly the rain wasn't hitting me anymore. We were inside something. The cave. I realized the cave that the Bigfoot had mentioned. The Bigfoot set me down gently on dry stone, and I collapsed, exhausted and shivering. The Bigfoot disappeared for a moment and returned with dry moss and small branches. The Bigfoot arranged these in a pile, then did something I never expected. The Bigfoot pulled out 2 rocks and struck them together, creating sparks. Within minutes, the Bigfoot had a small fire going. I huddled close to the flames, trying to get warm. My clothes were soaked through, and I was starting to shake uncontrollably from the cold. The Bigfoot watched me for a moment, then disappeared again into the darkness of the cave. When the Bigfoot came back, the Bigfoot was carrying what looked like animal pelts, old ones dried and cured. The Bigfoot spread these on the ground near the fire and pointed at them. Dry, warm. I didn't need to be told twice. I stripped off my wet clothes and wrapped myself in the pelts. They were musty and probably hadn't been cleaned in years, but they were dry and surprisingly warm. The Bigfoot sat down on the other side of the fire, that massive form barely visible in the flickering light. We sat there for hours while the storm raged outside. At some point I fell asleep, exhausted from fear and cold. When I woke up, the fire was still going. The Bigfoot must have been tending it while I slept. The Bigfoot was still there, sitting in the same spot, watching the entrance to the cave. Morning light was filtering in. The storm had passed. The Bigfoot led me back to my cabin that morning. The damage was worse than I'd thought in the darkness. The tree had crushed the southwest corner of the roof and one wall. Rain had poured in, soaking my bed, my clothes, and most of my food. My solar panels were damaged, half of them torn completely off the roof. I stood there looking at the destruction, trying to figure out what to do. I had some tarps, some tools. I could patch the roof, maybe make it livable again, but it was going to take days, maybe weeks, and I was already exhausted. The Bigfoot watched me assess the damage, then said, "Help fix." I was surprised. The Bigfoot was offering to help me repair my cabin. I tried to explain that the Bigfoot didn't have to do that, but the Bigfoot just shook that massive head. Friends, help friends. So we worked together. The Bigfoot couldn't use tools. Bigfoot's hands were too large and strong. The Bigfoot would have broken them. But the Bigfoot could lift things I never could have moved on my own. The Bigfoot pulled the fallen tree off my roof, branches that would have taken me hours to cut and remove. The Bigfoot held beams in place while I nailed them. The Bigfoot carried heavy stones from the forest to weigh down the tarps I used as temporary roofing. It took 3 days to make the cabin livable again. It wasn't pretty, and it definitely wasn't up to code, but it would keep the rain out and give me a place to sleep. The Bigfoot worked tirelessly, never complaining, never asking for anything in return. When we were finished, I tried to thank the Bigfoot. I didn't have words for what the Bigfoot had done, saving my life in the storm, sheltering me, helping me rebuild. The Bigfoot just looked at me and said, "Balance, you help me help." Same. The Bigfoot was right. We'd been helping each other all along. The Bigfoot had been teaching me, protecting me, showing me how to live in harmony with the forest. And in return, I'd been learning, accepting, treating the Bigfoot as an equal rather than as a monster or a myth. Over the next few weeks, as I continued repairing my cabin and replacing supplies, the Bigfoot taught me the most important lesson of all. We were sitting by the lake one evening, watching the sunset, when the Bigfoot spoke more words at once than I'd ever heard the Bigfoot use. "Humans forget, belong, forest." I asked what the Bigfoot meant. The Bigfoot pointed at me, then at the trees, then at the water. All the same, all connected. The Bigfoot was trying to explain something. A Bigfoot had been teaching me all along. Humans had forgotten that they were part of nature, not separate from it. We'd built our cities and our technology and convinced ourselves we were different, special, above the natural world. But the Bigfoot knew better. The Bigfoot said, "You wolf, tree, water, same a lava die, circle." The Bigfoot was describing the cycle of life and death, the interconnection of all living things. The Bigfoot understood this instinctively. I probably understood it for Bigfoot's entire life, but humans had lost that understanding, and in losing it, we'd lost something essential about who we are. I thought about my life before I came to these woods. The divorce, the stress, the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with the way I was living. I'd come out here to escape, but what I'd really needed was to reconnect, to remember that I was part of something larger than myself. The Bigfoot had taught me that, not with lectures or explanations, but by living it, demonstrating it every day. The Bigfoot lived in perfect balance with the forest, taking what the Bigfoot needed and nothing more. Respecting every creature, understanding that the Bigfoot's survival depended on the health of the entire ecosystem, I tried to tell the Bigfoot how much this meant to me, how much the Bigfoot had changed my perspective on everything. But words felt inadequate. Instead, I just sat there in silence, watching the sunset over the lake, grateful to have found something I never knew I was looking for. As autumn deepened and the days grew shorter, the Bigfoot continued to visit regularly. Some days we'd spend hours together, the Bigfoot showing me things about the forest I'd never noticed. Other days, the Bigfoot would just appear for a few minutes, check that I was doing okay, then disappear back into the trees. The Bigfoot showed me how to read the weather by watching the behavior of animals and the movement of clouds. The Bigfoot showed me which berries the bears were eating and which ones they avoided. The Bigfoot showed me hidden springs where the water was pure and cold, better than anything that came from my well. One day, the Bigfoot took me to a meadow I'd never found before. Hidden in a valley between two ridges, the meadow was full of wild flowers. Even though it was late in the season, elk were grazing there, dozens of them, completely unafraid of us. The big food sat down at the edge of the meadow and gestured for me to do the same. We watched the elk for over an hour, not speaking, just observing. The Bigfoot was teaching me patience, teaching me how to be present in the moment without needing to do anything or accomplish anything. When we finally left, the Bigfoot said, "Peace here always." I understood. The Bigfoot was showing me that peace wasn't something you had to search for or earn. You just had to stop, sit down, and pay attention. The Bigfoot also taught me about the darker aspects of the forest. One afternoon, the Bigfoot showed me the remains of a deer that had been killed by a mountain lion. The deer had been partially eaten, then left to rot. It wasn't pretty, and part of me was disturbed by the sight. But the Bigfoot pointed at the carcass and said, "Death, life, same." The Bigfoot showed me how insects were already working on the remains, how scavengers would finish what the mountain lion had started, how even the bones would eventually break down and return nutrients to the soil. Death wasn't an ending. The Bigfoot was saying death was just another part of the cycle, feeding new life. The Bigfoot took me to another spot where a tree had fallen years ago. The log was covered in moss and mushrooms, slowly decomposing. The Bigfoot pointed at it and said, "Tree dead, still alive." The fallen tree was hosting countless forms of life, fungi, insects, and small animals that made homes in the rotting wood. The tree was still playing a role in the ecosystem, still contributing even in death. These lessons weren't always easy to accept. I'd been raised with human ideas about death, about the importance of preserving life, about the tragedy of things ending. But the Bigfoot was showing me a different perspective, one that saw death as natural and necessary, not something to fear or fight against. As November arrived, the weather turned colder. Snow fell in the high country, and I knew winter was coming. I started preparing the way I always did, chopping extra firewood, checking my supplies, and making sure everything was ready for the long months ahead. The Bigfoot's visits became less frequent. I assumed the Bigfoot was preparing for winter too, wherever the Bigfoot lived. Sometimes I'd see tracks in the fresh snow, massive footprints that could only belong to the Bigfoot, but I wouldn't see the Bigfoot for days at a time. Then one morning in mid-November, I woke up to find the Bigfoot waiting outside my cabin. The Bigfoot was standing at the edge of the clearing, and as soon as I stepped outside, I could tell something was different. The Bigfoot looked agitated, shifting weight from foot to foot, glancing back toward the mountains. I asked if something was wrong. The Bigfoot looked at me and said, "Go soon north." My heart sank. The Bigfoot was leaving. Going back to where the Bigfoot had come from, back to the Bigfoot's family in the north. I'd known this couldn't last forever. The Bigfoot was a wild creature, not a pet or a friend who could stay in one place indefinitely, but knowing it didn't make it hurt any less. I asked when the Bigfoot would leave. The Bigfoot pointed at the sky where dark clouds were gathering. "Big snow comes, then go." There was a major storm system forecasted for the next few days. The Bigfoot would leave after that, probably heading north, while the snow was fresh and deep, making it harder for anyone to follow the Bigfoot's tracks. I asked if Bigfoot would come back. The Bigfoot was quiet for a long moment, then said, "Maybe not. KNO. I understood. The Bigfoot didn't know if Bigfoot would return. Maybe Bigfoot would find Bigfoot's family and stay with them. Maybe Bigfoot would never come back to this area again. The Bigfoot was being honest with me, not making promises the Bigfoot couldn't keep. We spent that day together one last time. The Bigfoot took me on a long walk through the forest, showing me places I'd never been. We visited the meadow with the elk, the hidden springs, and the cave where the Bigfoot had sheltered me during the storm. The Bigfoot was sharing these places with me, making sure I knew where they were, maybe so I'd remember after the Bigfoot was gone. As the sun was setting, we returned to the lake where we'd first met. We sat on the shore in almost the same spots we'd occupied that first day and watched the water turn orange and gold in the fading light. The Bigfoot spoke, and this time the words came slowly, carefully, like the Bigfoot was thinking hard about what to say. "You good human who learn good teaches others. Remember balance." I felt tears stinging my eyes. The Bigfoot was telling me to take what I'd learned and share it, to remember the lessons about balance and connection and living in harmony with nature. The Bigfoot was trusting me to carry this knowledge forward, to maybe teach other humans what the Bigfoot had taught me. I promised I would. I promised I'd never forget, never go back to the way I was before. The Bigfoot nodded, satisfied. Then the Bigfoot did something the Bigfoot had never done before. The Bigfoot reached out and placed one massive hand on top of my head, gently, carefully, like a benediction. The Bigfoot held it there for a moment, and I felt the weight and warmth of that hand, felt the connection between us. Then the Bigfoot stood up and walked away into the darkening forest. The Bigfoot didn't look back. The storm hit 2 days later, just as forecasted. It was fierce, but shorter than the last one, dropping 6 inches of snow overnight. When I woke up and looked outside, the world had been transformed into a white wonderland. I put on my boots and coat and went outside, following a familiar path down to the lake. The snow was deep and fresh, pristine white, covering everything. And there, leading away from the lake toward the northern mountains, was a trail of enormous footprints. I followed them for about a mile, as far as I could go before the terrain got too steep and difficult. The tracks were clear and deep, heading steadily north without deviation. A Bigfoot was gone. I stood there in the snow, looking at those footprints leading away into the wilderness, and I felt a mix of sadness and gratitude. Sadness that this incredible experience was over, that I might never see the Bigfoot again. But gratitude for everything that had happened, for everything the Bigfoot had taught me. That was 3 weeks ago. I haven't seen the Bigfoot since. I check regularly for signs, tracks, broken branches, anything that might indicate the Bigfoot has returned, but there's been nothing. Part of me hopes the Bigfoot made it back to the Bigfoot's family, that the Bigfoot is somewhere in the northern mountains, safe and healthy. Part of me hopes the big food will come back someday, that this isn't really the end. But mostly, I'm just grateful for what happened. I came out here 7 years ago looking for solitude, looking to escape from a world that didn't make sense. And I found something I never expected. A teacher, a friend, a connection to something ancient and wise. I've spent the last few weeks thinking about everything the Bigfoot taught me, trying to put it into words. The Bigfoot never gave lectures or explained things the way a human would. The Bigfoot taught by example, by demonstrating, by living the lessons the Bigfoot wanted me to learn. The biggest lesson was about connection. Everything in the forest is connected. The trees, the water, the animals, even the rocks and soil. Nothing exists in isolation. Every action has consequences. Every death feeds new life. Every ending is also a beginning. Humans have forgotten this. We've built a world where we pretend we're separate from nature. Where can we take and consume without consequences? But the big food knew better. The big food lived in balance, taking only what was needed, giving back as much as taking, understanding that Bigfoot's survival depended on the health of the entire system. The Bigfoot also taught me about patience and observation. The Bigfoot didn't rush through life, didn't constantly need to be doing something or accomplishing something. The Bigfoot could sit for hours just watching, just being present. The Bigfoot understood that there was value in stillness, in quietness, in simply existing without purpose or goal. And the Bigfoot taught me about respect. Respect for every living thing, from the smallest insect to the largest predator. The Bigfoot didn't see any creature as lesser or unimportant. The Bigfoot understood that everything played a role, that everything had value. These might seem like simple lessons, maybe even obvious ones, but living them, really embodying them the way the Bigfoot did, that's something different. That requires a fundamental shift in how you see the world, how you see yourself in relation to everything else. I'm still here in my cabin, still living alone in the forest, but everything's different now. I look at the trees differently, listen to the forest differently, and move through the world with more awareness and respect. I think about Bigfoot every day. I wonder where the Bigfoot is, what the Bigfoot is doing, if the Bigfoot ever thinks about our time together. I wonder if Bigfoot found Bigfoot's family, if they welcomed the Bigfoot back, if the Bigfoot told them about the human the Bigfoot befriended. I've started keeping a journal, writing down everything I can remember about my encounters with the Bigfoot. Partly because I want to preserve these memories, make sure I never forget, but also because the Bigfoot told me to teach others, to share what I'd learned. I don't know if anyone will believe me. I don't have photos or video. I never thought to bring my camera when the Bigfoot was around, and even if I had, it felt wrong somehow. The Bigfoot trusted me, shared things with me, and documenting it felt like a betrayal of that trust. But I have the memories. I have the lessons. I have the changes in how I see the world and my place in it. Sometimes on quiet evenings when I'm sitting on my porch watching the sunset, I think I see movement in the trees. A large shape familiar somehow, watching from the shadows. It's probably just my imagination, my mind creating what I want to see. But maybe not. Maybe the big food does come back sometimes just to check on me, make sure I'm still following the lessons. Maybe the big food is still out there, still teaching, still showing anyone willing to learn how to live in balance with nature. I hope so, because even if I never see the Bigfoot again, even if that November day was truly the last time, I know this. The Bigfoot changed my life. The Bigfoot taught me things I desperately needed to learn, gave me gifts I can never repay. I know what people will think when they read this. They'll say I made it up, that I'm crazy, that there's no such thing as talking big food. And honestly, I don't blame them. If someone had told me this story 6 months ago, I wouldn't have believed them either. But I know what I experienced. I know what I saw, what I heard, and what I learned. The Bigfoot was real. Bigfoot's intelligence was real. The friendship we formed was real. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. That reality is stranger and more wonderful than we usually allow ourselves to believe. We think we understand the world, think we've got it all figured out. But we don't. Things are living in these forests that we don't understand, can't understand, but exist outside our neat categories and explanations. The Bigfoot was one of those things. Not a monster, not an ape, not a missing link or an evolutionary dead end. The Bigfoot was just a being living a life following the wisdom of countless generations. The Bigfoot happened to cross paths with me, chose to teach me, and in doing so changed everything I thought I knew about the world. I can't prove any of this happened. I don't have evidence that would satisfy scientists or skeptics. All I have is my story, my memories, and the profound changes in how I see the world. But that's enough for me. And if even one person reads this and starts to question their assumptions about nature, about connection, about our place in the larger web of life, then maybe the Bigfoot's lessons will continue spreading, rippling outward like stones dropped in still water. It's getting dark now. I should go inside, start a fire, make some dinner. But I'm going to sit here a little longer, watching the forest, listening to the sounds of evening settling in. Sometimes I talk out loud, tell the Bigfoot about my day, about things I've noticed or learned. I don't know if Bigfoot can hear me. I don't know if Bigfoot is anywhere close, but it makes me feel connected, makes me feel like the friendship we formed is still alive somehow. The Bigfoot taught me that everything is connected, that nothing ever truly ends. Energy just transforms, moves from one form to another, and continues the endless cycle. Maybe that's true for relationships too. Maybe the bond I formed with the Bigfoot doesn't end just because the Bigfoot isn't here anymore. Maybe it continues, invisible but real, connecting me to something larger than myself. I hope you've read this far. I hope something in this story resonates with you, makes you think differently about the world around you. The Bigfoot wanted me to teach others, to share what I learned. This is me trying to honor that request. Whether you believe my story or not, whether you think the Bigfoot was real or just a figment of my imagination, doesn't really matter. What matters are the lessons about connection, about balance, about living in harmony with nature instead of trying to dominate it. Those lessons are real. Even if you doubt the teacher, the sun's almost down now. The forest is settling into its nighttime rhythms. Somewhere out there, maybe in these woods or maybe hundreds of miles north, the Bigfoot is doing the same. Settling in for the night, living the same connected, balanced life the Bigfoot always has. I'm grateful for every moment we shared. I'm grateful for every lesson the Bigfoot taught me. And I'm grateful to be here in this place, trying every day to live up to what I learned. If you're ever in the woods and you feel like you're being watched, if you hear sounds you can't identify or see movement in the shadows, don't be afraid. Maybe it's just your imagination. Or maybe it's something more, something ancient and wise, something that's been here longer than humans have been around. And maybe, if you're lucky, it will teach you something too. The Bigfoot changed my life. The Bigfoot showed me a different way of seeing, of being, of living, and now I'm passing that on to you, hoping that maybe you'll carry it forward too. That's what the Bigfoot wanted, that's what I promised. The rest is up to you. For more interesting stories, check this out.